Every single one of us has a story. And I know that every single one of us, at some point in our life, had a dream. We kind of imagined ourselves this way as we got older. And so often as we age, and I'm going to talk about that as well in a moment, as time goes along, we seem to let go of those dreams, that thing that was our purpose or our destiny. And that's the part that breaks my heart. And the reason I share this with you and why I even got involved in speaking to people was only because I couldn't not speak to people. And what I mean by that is that many years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I'm actually, you guys guess, where do you think I'm from? No, you can't do that if you know me. Definitely South, but you can tell. Thank you so much. Or he says California. No, I was raised in the South, and I was actually raised in the ghetto in Hampton, Virginia, near Hampton University, if you all know that. And the reality is, though, I was married very young, was very poor growing up. In fact, you know, when you go to school, your children go to school and they take a can of green beans and mashed potatoes for the poor people, well, we got the box. And, but there was a lot of great life lessons in that. But the reality is, though, I was married quite young. Shortly after our first child, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Now, this was 21 years ago when I was 6 years old, right? And, excuse me, you have to laugh a little harder than that. Oh, that's so funny, you know. But the reality is that I'm diagnosed with this autoimmune disease. And at the time, it was very unusual for someone so young to be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I was given a medication, and they didn't know at the time that that medicine could affect the heart of an unborn child. So through the course of my pregnancy, I was told that I needed to abort the baby. And I was told if I didn't abort the baby, some terrible things would occur. But the reality is maybe because I was raised poor, maybe because, you know, you kind of missed out on some of the opportunities where you've got people who pay attention to you. Maybe it was because of that I chose to listen to this still, small, sweet voice inside, if you will. And I chose to do something differently. And so, in fact, I didn't abort the child. And he was born in October 19th, 1989 with a significant heart defect, which led to numerous problems. In fact, by the time he was 7, you know, the list of problems would take several pages if I were to write them all down. But the beautiful thing is, though that happened, what happened to me is I was actually furious. But, you know, the way I looked at it, I was really angry. Did you all ever get angry? Maybe is it a Southern thing? Because I think Seattle people kind of hold it in a bit. Do you know what I'm talking about? Hold it in just a bit. But I realized that anger turned inward is depression. Anger turned out is violence. And I felt like I turned this anger and put it up. And I called it passion. But I got to tell you, the energy that drove me was really, truly anger. I'd really love to say it was something wonderful and holy and all that kind of stuff. But I was pissed. Truly. And I needed to find out why we're seeing this dramatic increase in autoimmune diseases. And now, through these years, why we're seeing this dramatic increase in chronic childhood illnesses. Why so many of our children now, you know, have autism. Why my dear friends are being diagnosed right now with MS and breast cancer in her mid-40s. I mean, I could just go on. And she's a trainer of triathletes. She's been an athlete living a healthy lifestyle her whole life. So what happened was for the next 7 years of my son's life, I went back to school and studied normally. What's a vitamin? You know, vitamin A, vitamin E, that's, you know, carbohydrates, what's on the plate. I had Dr. Oz's protocol figured out in the 1990s, early, about hydrogenated fats and all that. But you know what? I was doing all the right things, but our children were still getting sicker. And I say that because how many of you, you know you're fatigued, or maybe there's mild depression and you're here to take St. John's wort or take vitamin B or change your diet, and you do these things, but you don't really see a significant change in the way you feel based on the effort and the energy that you're putting out. Would any of you agree with me? I mean, I'd love to say that it all works just perfectly, but obviously it doesn't. Or we would not have these infomercials going on all day long about the next thing. And you know it's an infomercial when they tell you, and if you buy this one now, you get the second for free. You know that because you're never coming back. I am not an infomercial fan. Oh, and another thing I got to tell you about being from the South, you can say anything you want about somebody as long as you follow bless her heart. And it's spreading now to the Northwest. People are starting to say that. But the reality is that I got to this point and I realized that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now that's cliche, but what I'm saying is that I would go to the doctor every couple of weeks with another challenge, another challenge. What would happen? It was another prescription, another prescription, another prescription, and I'm thinking, this is just crazy. And I had this moment, this epiphany, where I literally was on my way to the doctor yet again for another round of antibiotics, for another whatever, and I pulled up at this red light. And you ever like drive down the road and zone out and zone back in again and you think you missed your exit? Okay? That's not a blonde thing? It's not? Okay. But I found myself just kind of zoning back in and I realized I'm behind this old Subaru with a billion bumper stickers and I always laugh, why do Subarus have lots of bumper stickers and not Fords and VWs? Right? You know? I think we could do a personality book on that. That would be the next book. Who's going to write that book, right? But anyway, I pulled this Subaru and there was this bumper sticker on it that said, doing the same thing over and over again is insanity. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm insane. I'm crazy. And I realized that that's what a lot of us are. We listen to the TV, the media, the prevention magazines, even the doctors who are trained from the pharmaceutical reps when in 2005 the pharmaceutical industry earned $256 billion, of which 25% was spent in marketing and direct-to-consumer ads to you and 13% in research. Now you look at that up. We're one of 2 countries that advertises this way. You feel bad today and the egg is following you around, the cloud's following you around, and you just need a happy pill. And you can't get it up, you need a blue pill. And I could go on and on and on about the pills and it will cause greasy seepage, so do not sit on a fabric seat with your white pants. I mean, and then there's an antidepressant medication when the side effect is depression. And I want to tell you something. If you're depressed, it does not mean you're deficient in Prozac. Think about that. Really think about that hard. But that's how I looked at things. So the bottom line is I turned that car around, and I want you to know that things are changing dramatically. I mean, just this month, you know, we grew up with the food pyramid, and now we're changing that. And just this month, we changed it again. And I'm telling you this because what I'm going to tell you today is I believe the greatest truths are the simplest. And we are looking for some complex answer when it is so simple. And we're living in exponential times where there's information that's been published, that's been out there for 50 and 60 years that we don't yet know about. See, I'm not, sorry. You just have to get used to me. That's just how it is. So the point is I then began to observe. I began to write everything down. Now, I'm happy to listen to the doctor, but if I went to the doctor and said, why do I have this disease? It is genetic. There's never an answer. And if I want to, is there a cure for lupus or MS? No, you always manage that condition. And I'm thinking, see, this didn't make sense on just a poor little girl's simple-minded level. Did not make sense. And I got to tell you, it's a good thing sometimes to be stubborn and ignorant. Because it gave me the energy to look and look and look. And so here is an example where, for instance, this child's diagnosed with ADHD. And I noticed that certain foods created certain behaviors. And there was a whole lot of stuff that I can't do for you guys in 45 minutes today. But the bottom line is I asked him to write his name after noting that when he ate peanut butter, there was a change in his behavior. Now, I could give him a speed, or I could start observing and answering questions. And so I asked him to write his name. He had not had any for 4 days. I then fed him 1 piece of toast with peanut butter on it, and I asked him to write his name 15 minutes later. And 15 minutes later, he can't even spell it. Now, another mother might not be as angry. She's tired and overwhelmed, and she just doesn't know what to think, so she's just going to go and move forward. But you know what I wanted more than anything? Is I wanted to know my child free of drugs. And I needed then to find another answer. And because of that, I realized that I didn't have an M or EEG, right? I couldn't do brain imaging, but that's what it is an imbalance in the brain. But I did notice that if I put something into his body, that there was a significant change in behavior, so therefore I became a student of the GI tract. And I'm going to share with you that in my opinion, everything is the same. We go and we get personal training, nutritionists, marital counseling, therapy. We get, how do I raise my kids? This, and that. But you know what? Everything is the same. I'm going to see if I can show that to you today. One thing I know is that there's a profound relationship between the development of the intestinal area to overall health. And I'm going to show you, just like Perry Mason, or who would be more current? Who? Some lawyer somewhere, who knows? Just stating a case and you're the jury, okay? But the question is, when somebody has asthma, eczema, allergies, endometriosis, MS, lupus, cancer, would you agree that what we know in science is that they have an overactive immune system? Okay, that's the general consensus, and so therefore the treatment is to suppress the immune system. Steroids suppress the immune system. Chemotherapy and so on suppress it. So that's something that's just a basic tenet that you have to look at. Well, I kind of looked at it differently, and I looked at it this way. If it's true that my child has asthma, eczema, allergies, ADHD, respiratory airway disease, and the list goes on, and he's got this system that's overactive, as do I, because I had an autoimmune disease, then why is the system overactive? That was the question. Why? Okay, I know it's overactive, but why? Because it's like if you want to build a house, you got to put that foundation in first. And no one could answer the question. So I dug and dug and dug, and for 8 years I researched until I came upon a hypothesis. And I applied the principles, and that boy that I was told to abort, that boy that had all those diagnoses, and our daughter who had numerous conditions as well, poor little thing, I always leave her out. The reality is that they became 100% whole, and in fact our son just finished his 2nd year at the United States Military Academy after receiving his congressional appointment. And that makes me want to cry every time I say it, and I don't like anybody to say good for you, so don't ever say that to me. Why it bothers me so much is because there's other parents and people who are diagnosed with fibromyalgia and horrible psoriasis, and there's all these commercials on television that don't realize you don't even have to be afraid of any of those things. And that's why the word's got to get out. So I started talking about it. This is back from 1997. I was already in front of people in the fitness world, but I couldn't talk about doing step. I mean, that's fun, but I can dance. Yeah, I'm from the South. No, I had to talk about this. And so it was really kind of funny because it was kind of hard to shift from that and find an audience, But I just kept talking and talking, and the audience kind of grew, and then people said, write this book. So I'm going to share with you some of this information today, but I want to point out, first of all, is how in the world, I remember back in 1992 when I was struggling through this research. Josh was born in 89. Mind you, I'm about 3 years into this, and things weren't good. And I remember picking up Tony Robbins books and, so-and-so books, and I'm like, think positive, and it will all change, And I got to tell you, it's really hard to think positive when you truly feel like crap. I'm not kidding. I mean, and what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So I'm going to ask you to do me a little exercise. I want everybody to stand up real quick. And I want you to stand behind your chair. So you have to maneuver your chair such that you're standing behind it because you're going to need to hold on to it. All right? Just for a second. Not real tight now. I just want to be there in case you need something. Now I'm going to ask you, I asked you how you doing. Everybody says fine. But I want to define fine. And fine would be getting up at the crack of dawn because the sunlight went in, well, if there is some sunlight in Seattle, but that lighter gray sunlight sky kind of shone in, and your melatonin and cortisol kind of were up there, and it's like open the eyes and you're wide awake. You don't need the caffeine to make it through the morning. You go to work, go to school feeling great. You don't need that B vitamin awake hit at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We got Works and Awake and this and that and Red Bull and everything else. You get home after work, you kiss your husband, kiss your wife, kiss your spouse, your significant other, whatever, make dinner, then you go back out to the PTA meeting, the business meeting, and you get back home at 11 o'clock at night, you do that last load of laundry, and your head hits the pillow at midnight, and you sleep deeply. That's always the kicker, the deeply part, right? So, I want you to do me a favor. What you're going to do is stand at your chair, you're holding it very lightly, and you're going to lift your one leg, and you're going to lift it so that it's parallel to the floor. Okay? Now you're going to let go of the chair. And if you're going to fall, I want you to use the chair so I don't get sued. Okay? So you can sue the chair, not me. Okay, now put it down. Well, you do the same thing. But this time I want you to close your eyes. Then you're going to lift your leg and let go of the chair. Okay? So go ahead. Let go. Close your eyes. It's really very difficult. I'm proud of you guys for trying. So I'm not a crazy girl. Thank you. You can sit down. Let me tell you what that means. That was just a test to see how receptive you were. No, I'm just joking. You know what it's about, though? There's balance tests you can do for how old you are. How old am I? You know, how long you can stand there in balance. But what I found is that I ask you to close your eyes and lift your leg, and I've done this with hundreds and hundreds of people. And there'll be a person who's standing up with their eye open can hold it for 2 hours, okay? They're fit, young, flexible, whatever, whatever, whatever. But then I ask those same people to close their eyes and hold it up. There should be no difference because the physical level we already established, right? And what I'm finding is that whether they're super fit, old, young, flexible, whatnot, there's this huge variance in how long they can hold it. There's like, you know, falling all over the place. And what I recognized is that when I ask you to close your eyes and lift your leg, I'm not asking you just what your fitness level is or how old you are, which is a joke I'll get to in a second. But the point is, people are shaking partly because they're not in shape and they have, you know, their balance is off, but there's others. There's trust issues. There's fear issues. Geez, if I fall over, I don't have insurance to fix my leg. You know, the list could go on and on and on. And it's interesting when you begin to look at people, and just as we've heard today with the jumpers, all this unconscious inner dialogue that's going on that directs so many things. And I got to tell you, I already asked you to stand. I have to tell you that I have a personal issue with this word called salvation. And I'm going to get to that in a second, just to wake you up. But when people ask me how old I am, what do you think I say? Now, my daughter is 25, June 30th. Our son is 21. I do not say I'm 29 for the 10th time or 39 for the 5th time or whatever the heck it is. I answer simply, I'm not. How old are you? I'm not. Because I want you to know that the words we speak, not only do they tell me what you're thinking deep inside, but you're listening to these words that you speak. So when I was looking at this entire situation and I was moving forward and I was believing in a promise, and the promise was when I was told to abort this child and I fell on my knees and I heard you will have a healthy baby boy and his name will be Joshua Daniel, I remember standing and it was as true as it was as true as it was true. And though I moved through this pregnancy and there was numerous things that occurred that said that was just a fantasy, that was in your head, that wasn't real. Then he's born and he has this heart defect and we go on and on and on. I asked myself, why is it that for some people things seem easy? Why is it for some people they just seem to get it? And others are just constantly trying and trying and trying. And the point is that when I was going through this, I was searching for the health for my child, but certainly at the same time, I had to do a whole lot of mental work myself just to be able to get through it. Fair? So, you know, who is chosen? Who is special? You know, and I kept asking this question. Mind you, I mean, being super poor, why some and not everybody? And I learned, and it's funny in the Bible, when there's a story when Mary walked in and Elizabeth was pregnant. Elizabeth leapt, the baby leapt within her womb at the sight of Mary. And Elizabeth did not say, oh my gosh, Mary, you know, you're awesome because you're God's son, you know, God, Mary, hey. She said, Mary, blessed are you for you have chosen to believe the promise of God. And I remember those words, you have chosen to believe. And it kind of made me realize that every single one of us is chosen. Every single one of us has been given a little flash of destiny, a dream. But the difference is that there's some of us who choose to hold on to that. They don't let it go. And then there's others that, for many reasons, which we're going to talk about a touch today, just lets it go. Just like that bird, boom, just lets it go. That's not me. That's just a fantasy. You see, there's 3 kinds of people, and you need to really know who you are. And so many of us in this room are stuck in number 2. We know who the person is that lacks self-love. We know that person who is constantly abusing themselves and getting themselves in the same negative situation. And there's many, many reasons, whether it's early childhood trauma and so on and so forth, that they're in that situation. We can recognize those people quite easily. Would you agree with that? And now we're teaching our schools about self-esteem, self-esteem, self-esteem. And self-esteem is really a function of I'm worthy and I love myself. But self-esteem and self-efficacy are two entirely different things. And self-efficacy is a belief to your core that what you set out to accomplish, you will accomplish. You do not worry about the how, you focus on the why, and you trust. Whether you're trusting in God or the universe or your family or whomever it is in your world, but there's a sense of trust that what I ask for, I will receive. Self-efficacy cannot be taught in schools when you're telling children that you're doing great because they could cut the line perfect straight in a piece of paper. Self-efficacy comes when we're faced with challenges and we overcome those challenges. Self-efficacy comes because we see ourselves actually moving forward. It is false to just boost people up with these false compliments, if you will, self-esteem, because they know deep inside. Eventually they're going to know, and it's important that we build self-efficacy, not just self-esteem. And understand that self-efficacy from a coach perspective or a mother's perspective or a parent's perspective is, I love you, sweetie. This is not how you do it. Let me show you how to do that. And you set that person up, whether it's your coworker, whether it's your child, whether it's the person you're coaching, with small situations that they can be successful at. You don't set them up for failure, because when you set them up for failure, you just blew away their self-efficacy and their self-esteem. In both children, coworkers, your husband. You want your husband to plan you a big $5,000 vacation for the weekend or whatever? Give him the opportunity to set up little tiny ones along the way. Build his self-efficacy. It is true and true in every relationship that you have. That's why I have a problem with this word called salvation. Now, I was raised in the South, and I was raised in church. Then I come to Seattle, Washington, where 3% of the people go to church. And it's like, there's palm things, and on the street corner, like there's strip bars in North Carolina on the street corner. And I'm like, wow, it's different here. But it's funny, I'm so blessed and so thankful that I really have had two different extremes, because it gives me a chance to find my way, like a pendulum. Where am I in this mix? But what bothers me with this word is that when we sit back and judge another, whether it's your coworker, your child, your spouse, your sister, or whomever, because they're doing this and they're doing that, what is not fair is you're not considering their past programming, their genetics, and this is why I wrote 3 books, their chemical and mineral imbalances, and I will get to that in just a second, and maybe give you just a softer heart and a way to help improve that person's not only emotional state, but physical state, because everything is the same. Neonatal care, early childhood experiences. It's so easy to sit back and judge my sister, who's got some serious issues, but at the same time, I don't know everything that goes on with her chemical makeup, her genetic makeup. Certainly you're going to hear in a moment why I wrote this book called Saving Generation Next, because what we do right now not only affects you and me, but this next generation in ways far beyond genetics. And so, my prescription for a difficult life. Let's look at some of the root to what I found when I was able to help, for instance, our children. They told me, again, going back to health and the immune system. And I'm talking about depression, I'm talking about weight gain, you name it, and I got it. I know, I used to be kind of shy. A little shy and wouldn't speak up, but I don't care anymore. When we look at the body, you have to first look at the immune system, right? Let's start with the immune system. We got an immune system that's going kind of crazy. We have an immune system that can be compromised because we got radiation coming out of Japan over here, and we can just go on and on and on. I mean, the list goes on. And you all know about the environment and the high power lines, and we know that stuff. But let's do something we need to do what we can do something about, rather than what we can't do something about. Fair? And that was me. I knew I can't necessarily change what's in my entire environment, so I needed to know what was happening in my body. So here's the key. If I were to look at the entire immune system, 30% of the immune system, 30%, is made of tissue called, for instance, nasal-associated lymphatic tissue. You have sinus infections. Conjunctiva-associated lymphatic tissue, you have pink eye. Bronchial-associated lymphatic tissue, asthma, bronchial infection, so on and so forth. So you can see the ALT stands for associated lymphatic tissue, and the letter in front is where that tissue is. Make sense? Pretty simple. 30% of that to include your lymph nodes and so on and so forth. So if 30% of my immune system is all that, where's the other 70%? And the other 70%, interestingly enough, is called gut-associated lymphatic tissue. So 70% of your immune system is intimately related to your intestinal area and is called gut-associated lymphatic tissue. The acronym would be GALT. Now, this was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. It was 1998 when I started recognizing what I'm going to share with you right now and began to change that. And what's interesting is you think, when anybody says intestinal area anymore, we think about a colon cleanse or Jamie Lee Curtis and Activia ads for regularity. But it's so much more than that. So much more than that. And it's not just about probiotics at all. And hopefully I can get that across to you in this brief time that we have together. But this gut-associated lymphatic tissue now is 70%. I want you to think about something. If 70%, well, let's look at it this way. If you were to look at lymphatic tissue and liken it to rivers and streams and oceans on the earth, you would agree that if you're polluting one body of water continuously somewhere, eventually it's going to move on to other parts. We know that, okay? So if 70% of my immune system is related to my intestinal area and it's called gut-associated lymphatic tissue, and I can show you how dramatically that's been compromised and can lead to disease beyond constipation and colitis, then maybe we could do something about that. But I will tell you that when there's an imbalance there, you see it manifest, for instance, in the bronchial-associated lymphatic tissue, and there's asthma, or in the skin and there's eczema, or you see toenail fungus. And I remember doing a lecture one time to medical professionals, and this nurse, you mean that the toe isn't related to the gut? And it's like, well, you know, there's no fences in your body, and we have manifestations outside that are evident of internal imbalances. So if 70% is there, we know that if there's an imbalance there, we can see it manifest in other parts of the body. So what I came at this and I thought, okay, I can't fix my son's situation from when he was born. I can't fix this, and that, but I can fix this gut-associated lymphatic tissue if I understood about it. And I understood that if I were to improve health, I had to improve this intestinal area, which would in the end improve the immune system. And I even saw how it improved the emotional state. There are more neurotransmitter receptor sites in the gut than in the brain. There are more serotonin receptor sites in your gut than in your brain. Yet we constantly are treating with drugs for the head. And then every other medication that we're giving has a negative side effect that affects what? Absolutely, the GI tract. So, how is this gall developed? Now, once I kind of got that with regards to the immune system, the next question was, okay, well, how is this? I mean, were we born with it? I had no clue, right? How is it developed? Well, when a child is born, in the beginning, the child's intestinal tract, now mind you, when I think in my head of intestinal tract, I'm thinking immune system. I'm thinking of it synonymously. And I know that when the child is born, he's been in the amniotic fluid for 9 months, and there's no bacteria in the amniotic fluid. It's sterile. So the intestinal tract is also sterile. And as the child is birthed through the birth canal, it is exposed to its first bacteria, which I call its maternal inoculation. It is literally receiving bacteria from mother that seeds and is the dawning of the immune system. And in that maternal inoculation, the bacteria in mother's birth canal literally mirrors what's in her intestinal tract. When the child is born, he receives that first seeding. But if we were to do nothing more, that would be like moving into a home. You have a barren lawn out front, and you just throw some grass seed down and hope it grows. You don't till the soil, you don't fertilize, you don't water it. You see what I'm saying? So that's just the beginning. And interestingly enough, since 1966, we had 4% C-section rates in 1966. Today they're at 34%. In other countries, it's even greater than that. So we have a generation, a third of our population, that's actually missing out on this initial inoculation. And we're hoping they're going to get it from what's in the hospital room, I guess. It goes so much further. And I'm trying to give you the short version today. So now I planted the seed. The second thing that's important is the way the child is fed, obviously. And we've heard about breastfeeding. We've heard about bottle feeding. I know many of you women are, what's that? I have 5 minutes. That's interesting. In breast milk, 1/3, for 70, 80 years, we knew that 1/3 was protein, 1/3 was fat, but we didn't know that there was this other third that had no calories. It was never put into formulas. And that other third is something called oligosaccharides, which is something that we don't even hear about. But this third, called oligosaccharides, is like fertilizer for the grass seed, and it's dramatically important to the development of the immune system. I can show you that the more of these oligosaccharides, the more of the immune system is then tempered. It is not a hyperactive immune system. But let me show you a few more things, since I thought I had my timer on, a bit more time here. Let me see where I'm at. So the point is in the 1920s and 30s, because of World War II and refrigeration, we took 50% of the population off of what was breast milk and gave them evaporated milk at the time, not knowing anything about what needed to be in there to develop the immune system. So if you go further, research is just recently being published, for instance, that children that are breastfed versus bottle-fed children have more staph and strep in their intestinal tract. And because of that, there's more inflammation, and they're actually more prone to obesity. If you look further, this is the obesity rate in children from 1966 through 2007. That's the obesity and overweight chart. And if you'll look, do you see the statistics? 4% in 1966 overweight and obese. We had 32% in 2007 overweight and obese. And you see that as the exact same graph as there was with C-sections. Now, am I saying there's a direct correlation to C-sections and obesity? No. But what I am saying is when the child has not received that initial inoculation and that inoculation is not developed with the way they are fed, that child will have more inflammation in the intestinal tract, and that will create increases in oxidative stress. And I can show you physically and scientifically where that increase in oxidative stress will make every experience more stressful for you. So you have two children, and when they fall off the merry-go-round, or somebody takes their teddy bear, and one's going nuts, and the other one's kind of like, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that. And we just are hard on that kid, or he's got ODD or ADD, and let's give him a drug. But I can show you that when there is this inherent imbalance, that child is physically already under stress, so that every experience is a greater stressor. And if you were born perfectly and fed perfectly, yet years of antibiotics, medications, high sugar diets, stress, chlorine, caffeine, and the list goes on, there will be a disruption that will trigger a hyper state or heightened state in your immune system. So when you look at the passage of time, what I know is that you saw 4 generations ago were the baby boomers. Those baby boomers, I would imagine from 46 to 64, the children were born through a birth canal that was probably pretty normal and healthy because their mothers hadn't been exposed to drugs, McDonald's. 1945, the average 5-year-old had 1 vaccine. Today it's 25. I could go on and on and on and on. So let's assume that the mothers back then, baby came out, got some pretty good grass seed. But 50%, no, don't nurse them. It's archaic, it's this, it's that. What happened is they then delivered children in the 60s and 70s, a shadow generation that now received less of a quality of an inoculation from their maternal inoculation. And we pile on to that our frozen foods, our microwaves, the list goes on and on and on and on. And now we have Generation X and what I call Generation RX, where these children, you look at this and you see this 4-fold increase in ADHD, asthma, autism. I mean, this is our next generation. And then the women, the mothers, trying to work a job, and you got these children that are off the charts nuts, if you will. The number of people I work with whose kids got Asperger's to autism is unheard of. Yesterday I met with a lady with 4 kids. 2 have some version of muscular dystrophy, and the other 2 have these other issues. This is all that I do. And it's really so simple. When you have an imbalance in the intestinal area, bottom line, there's an increase in oxidative stress. If you're here for vanity reasons, as you increase oxidative stress, you will be aging faster. I always laugh. 20-year-olds are aging faster than they did 40 years ago, 30 years ago. They are, look at them. It's great. For me. No, I'm joking. But I mean, when you look, they're getting old man diseases, number one, but I love the muffin top term. You know, muffin top is a function of a cortisol imbalance. And, you know, we used to call that Dunlop disease. You know, your belly done lopped over your belt. Now it's all cute. It's muffin top, right? But when you talk about how does this here affect here, let me show you a couple of things. We are conditioned and taught that we have an immune system inside of our body, which is true. And it's that immune system inside our body that when it goes awry will then attack you and you have MS or lupus or the list goes on, okay? But we have an immune system outside of our body. And this is key to this discussion. See, people think if I eat an apple and swallow it, it's in my body. But the GI tract, until it is digested and passes into the blood, it is still outside your body. Can you get that? Is feces inside your body or outside your body? It is outside your body. It's always been outside your body. When you spit, when you have saliva, when you have digestive enzymes, those are like sweat. It's an exocrine secretion, this tube that goes through you. Just imagine, you know, I don't know, if you take an apple and core it, the GI tract is the core in the middle that's missing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's still outside your body. In fact, when the baby develops, the skin and GI tract is made from the same tissue. So we have to understand the GI tract is outside my body. Can we understand that? When it's digested and gets in the blood, then it gets in, okay? Now, along the mucous membrane of all this associated lymphatic tissue, meaning my eyes, my lungs, my nose, my GI tract, there's mucous membrane. And in that mucous membrane, there's a special kind of antibody that's outside the body. There's a different kind of antibody inside the body. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's pretend that top chain is a strep protein. Now a protein, and this is the part that's a little hard, just relax, take a breath, don't think I'm getting into science too much. It's really not that tough. But a protein, any protein, whether it's milk, strep, peanut butter, whatever, that protein is hundreds of amino acids long. There are about 20 amino acids, right? So each color is a different amino acid. Now, if I have some disease and my body says, ooh, I see strep, I'm going to attack it, unfortunately, it doesn't say when I see strep, amino acid number 1 to 223, whenever I see that, I'm going to attack it. What it does instead is it looks only for a sequence on the strep protein. Why would it do that? Number one, it's not supposed to see a whole bunch of that, because if I had the outside immune system working, I wouldn't see it at all. How do you get exposed to something like strep, for instance? You breathe it in, you ingest it. Obviously, if we cut ourselves and something gets in there, that's a way, but typically it's being first exposed to our mucous membrane, right? Breathing it in, ingesting it. So in that mucous membrane, I've got a special kind of immune system that has been compromised because of this degradation of the intestinal area. So if I had to remember as a body the entire sequence, that's like remembering a combination on a lock that's 200 numbers long, one of 20 numbers. So it only remembers the sequence, just like your gym locker in high school. Now, look at this. The bottom chain is a protein from your brain. And unfortunately, a sequence of that protein looks like strep. And what we've now learned, for instance, is pediatric associated neurological disorder associated with strep, like tics, Tourette's, obsessive compulsive disorder, is from strep. Because the strep got into the body made an antibody, and it's mistakenly attacking the brain, which is similar to MS, when the body meant to attack a different protein, but now it's attacking your nerves, or to rheumatoid arthritis, it's attacking your joints. But it all happened because it meant to attack a different protein. Now, how come all these proteins are in our blood and getting mistaken for our body? Because the outside immune system isn't there anymore. You see, when we have an abundance of this healthy bacteria in the gut, we have an abundance of this antibody that I like to compare to, you ever seen the Star Trek episode? They had the Klingons and they had the cloaking device. Remember, an antibody inside your body says, whenever I see you, strep, I'm always going to attack you, and it never stops. It's like the Terminator. which is why autoimmune disease is not curable. This antibody outside, in the gut, for instance, when it sees strep, it acts like the Klingons. It cloaks it, degrades it, destroys it before it's ever seen by the inside immune system, thus minimizing the likelihood for autoimmune disease and inflammatory conditions. I call them like bouncers and guards. Without them, we have more chance for what's called friendly fire. The fact of the matter is, when this isn't out of balance, there's more neurotransmitters in the gut than in the brain, number one. I could go on and on, which is why I've written 3 books where you can have changes in your ability to absorb minerals, like Michael Jackson, who first had this problem from being a youngest of 13 child who was eating at 5, they're rich as anything. I want popcorn, Mama. I want Pop-Tarts, Captain Crunch, soda, 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 because he could. No one knew it was bad in the 70s. Sugar, 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 fueling this imbalance. Stress, 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 fueling this imbalance. And God knows what Mama was able to give after 13 children. His first symptom of this imbalance was he had fingernail fungus, which he hid with a glove. We just thought he was creative and eccentric. But because he didn't fix what I call the roof, you know, it's like we know the roof is leaking, we got a problem, we got water in our house, and we're busy changing the buckets, changing the carpet, changing the furniture, but we don't fix the roof. Just new drugs, new diet, we still haven't fixed the root. And so then he just established vitiligo because he had proteins that were entering his bloodstream because of his compromised intestinal area. The body mistake those proteins for his skin. He gets vitiligo. Now he's got to bleach his whole skin to hide his vitiligo. He had autoimmune disease. He then developed lupus, but I'll tell you, when it's super, super, super severe, that body cannot absorb minerals like magnesium, potassium, and calcium, and they will not sleep. They'll be prone to depression. Serotonin is made of magnesium, B vitamins, and an amino acid called HTP. This body, under increased oxidative stress, will have more cortisol, stress hormone. Cortisol was meant to help us run from lions, but now we have this chronic stress. Now we got stress going on even when we're not stressed. Excessive cortisol is caused from, you know, this intestinal area is out of balance, and things like skipping meals, which I believe you spoke about this morning, Marnie, or Will. But the point is, we know it's skipping meals, eating a high-sugar diet, but so is cigarette smoking, alcohol use, caffeine, but also this intestinal area, which is out of balance. And now all of a sudden, it's like I keep getting this weight around my waist. I don't know what I'm doing differently. And when the weight is coming on around the waist, you have excessive cortisol, and you have a challenge in the insulin cortisol. And we got children with muffin top. Do you see what I'm saying? Kids with this. And after all that, we're supposed to think positive. Just think positive. Change those affirmations. Just do this. You see what I'm saying? So as I was going through this process for myself personally, all I knew is that everything is the same. And you can't walk down this path trying to change your finances when you don't feel well. And if you don't feel well, it's very difficult for you to try to start talking yourself into the fact that you do feel well. But what concerns me is there's so many people that, I mean, our children and you, that inherently aren't feeling 100% every day. I mean, you get by, but you know you're tired. You sit in that meeting at 3. You wish you could just put your head on the table. You drive home and someone cuts you off, and it's, you know, but all of that would be certainly improved, if you can imagine, if you obviously felt really great. And it's not about spending a ton of money. I love this little picture here. I began to, as I saw everything was the same, I had to work on my words because my words were reflecting what was in my heart. And what I realized is that I couldn't change my heart right away. I had to change my body, change my gut. And I'm not talking about being a fanatic. I got to tell you, anybody knows me, I am... I mean, yes, do I have a hot dog at a football game? Do I have an occasional cigar? I absolutely do. Do I do this? I am not a fanatic. I don't believe in that. I don't. But I do know that if you understand the basic principles and can fix the roof, you can truly live a life where it doesn't matter what you eat from Thanksgiving to Christmas. It's what you eat from Christmas to Thanksgiving. You see what I'm saying? I mean, come on, people. I'm just not into being the fanatic. But I love this. You see, when you know when you know where you're going, and when you really know what you can do to fix and to create a foundation, a strong foundation, and then you begin to watch your words, you know, this doggy is saying, I will sit down. That little kitten that's being mushed underneath him is like, I want to get up. I want to get up. And what's interesting is the word want means lack. And their energy around that word want is lack. And so I began to change my words. I am, I will, not I want, I wish, I could, I can't, I'll try. Do you see what I'm saying? And it was interesting that I learned that what was really happening as I was changing this, I had to focus on two things, my I am and the power of I am. Those words I am with your children, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, I'm not that smart, I'm this, I'm that. Those I am statements are the most powerful, and those I am statements are everything about you.